Dadperfectrevenge. Tyler, not Dad. Just Tyler. Like I was some family friend who wandered in off the street. That's how my own daughter introduced me to her fancy friends at my granddaughter's awards ceremony, after I'd paid $45,000 for that kid's education. I'm Tyler Brooks, 57 years old, and I've been busting my back in construction for 35 years so my family could have better than I did. But apparently, that doesn't make me good enough to sit with the actual family at Riverside Preparatory Academy. The usher looked at me like I'd tracked mud across their marble floor. She was young, maybe 25, with a tablet and a smile that never reached her eyes. Behind her, I could see the auditorium, all crystal chandeliers and brass fixtures that probably cost more than my annual salary. "I'm sorry, sir, but family seating is reserved for parents and primary guardians only," she said, glancing at her screen. "We have general seating available in the back section." "I'm Jessica Brooks' grandfather," I told her, looking past her into that auditorium. Those first 10 rows had little brass plaques reading "Reserved Family Seating," and I counted at least a dozen empty chairs, maybe more. "The reserved section is quite full, sir," that practiced smile again, "but you'll have a wonderful view from the back." Before I could tell her exactly what I thought about their seating arrangement, Ashley appeared at my elbow. My daughter, 32 years old, dressed in some charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in a week supervising construction crews. Her hand touched my arm, gentle but firm, like she was handling an embarrassing relative who didn't know better. "Tyler, come on, I'll show you where to sit." There it was again. Tyler. Not Dad, not father, not even my dad Tyler. Just Tyler, like I was Brandon's golf buddy or someone she'd met at a networking event. She guided me toward the back of the auditorium, her heels clicking on that polished floor like a metronome, counting down my dignity. I caught her glance toward a cluster of people near the front, men in suits that cost more than my truck, women wearing jewelry that sparkled under those chandeliers, all holding wine glasses from some pre-ceremony reception I apparently wasn't invited to. "Ashley," I said, stopping dead in my tracks. "There are empty seats up front. It's assigned seating, Tyler." Her voice had that edge to it, the same tone she'd used when she was 16 and didn't want to be seen with me at the grocery store. "Please don't make a scene. Don't make a scene." Those 4 words hit me harder than the time I took a 2x4 to the head on a job site. I'd worked construction since I was 22 years old. 35 years of crawling under buildings, my hands permanently stained with concrete dust and motor oil. 35 years of double shifts and weekend jobs to make sure Ashley had everything she needed after her mother died. Mary had been gone 8 years now. Heart attack at 49. Just dropped dead in our kitchen while making Ashley's favorite cookies for her college care package. ID raised that girl alone from age 15. Worked myself into the ground to pay for her college, helped with the down payment on her first house. And 3 years ago, when she came to me crying about Jessica's education, when she begged me to help because the public schools just aren't good enough, I'd written a check for $45,000. $45,000. 3 years of private school tuition paid in advance. Half my retirement savings gone in one signature, because that's what fathers do. We sacrifice. We provide. We make sure our kids have better than we did. I sat in the back row, row Z probably, and watched my granddaughter Jessica walk across that stage. She was 12 years old in a white dress, clutching her mathematics achievement award, and from where they'd stuck me, she looked like a doll in a dollhouse. I clapped as hard as I could, but my applause got swallowed up by all those well-dressed people in the family section, the people who apparently mattered more than the man who'd paid for Jessica to be there in the first place. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the adjacent hall, more crystal, more marble, flower arrangements that probably cost what I spent on groceries in a month. I found Ashley standing with Brandon, her husband, 35 years old, some kind of contractor who specialized in high-end residential projects. With them was another couple I'd never seen before. The man wore a Rolex. I know because it caught the light when he lifted his wine glass. His wife had diamonds at her throat like she was attending the Academy Awards instead of a middle school ceremony. "Ashley," I said, walking up to their little circle. She turned, and I saw something flash across her face. Not embarrassment exactly, more like panic, like she was calculating how much damage control she'd need to do. "Tyler, This is Kevin and Michelle Porter. Their son goes to school with Jessica. She paused just long enough to make it awkward. Kevin, Michelle. This is Tyler. That's it. This is Tyler. Not this is my father or this is my dad. Tyler, or even this is Tyler, Jessica's grandfather. Just Tyler, like I was the guy who fixed their air conditioning or delivered their groceries. Pleased to meet you, I said, extending my hand. Kevin shook it, one of those brief, dismissive handshakes you give to service workers. Are you with the school? Michelle asked, already looking past me towards someone more interesting. No, Ashley's. Tyler does consulting work, Ashley jumped in, her voice bright and artificial as sweet and low. Transportation logistics, very technical stuff. He's semi-retired now. Her hand was on my arm again, that same firm pressure, steering me away from her conversation like I was a shopping cart that had rolled into the produce section. Tyler, I think Jessica is looking for you. Why don't you go find her? She practically pushed me toward the dessert table before I could finish my sentence. Before I could. Tell Kevin and Michelle Porter that I was Ashley's father, that I'd raised her alone, that every dollar they were throwing around at this fancy reception had been earned with my hands and my sweat. When we were out of earshot, I stopped. Transportation logistics? Tyler, please. A construction supervisor, Ashley. I run job sites. I make sure buildings don't fall down. These people don't need to know that. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a house fire. What's wrong with what I do for a living? Nothing. Nothing's wrong with it. She glanced around, making sure none of her new friends were listening. It's just, this is a different world. Brandon's trying to build relationships with potential clients. We need connections. We need people to see us a certain way. And what way is that? She looked at me like I was being deliberately obtuse, not as the daughter of a construction worker. There it was, clean and sharp as a box cutter, the truth she'd been dancing around. For months, maybe years. I'd been demoted from father to liability, from provider to embarrassment. I found Jessica by the dessert table, still clutching her award certificate. She had Ashley's dark hair, but my blue eyes. The same eyes that had watched her take her first steps in our old living room, back when we lived in the house where Ashley grew up. Grandpa! She hugged me tight, and for just a moment, everything else faded away. Did you see? I got the highest score in my entire grade. I saw, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. A blonde girl in a designer dress was hovering nearby, obviously listening. Rich kids learn early how to eavesdrop politely. Jessica, who's that? The girl asked, pointing at me like I was some interesting museum exhibit. This is my grandpa Tyler, Jessica said proudly. Cool. What does your grandpa do? My dad's a surgeon. He went to Johns Hopkins. I looked down at Jessica's honest face, waiting for my answer. Then I looked at this blonde kid, probably, parroting whatever her parents had taught her about social hierarchies and status markers. I supervise construction projects, I said. I make sure buildings get built safe and strong. That sounds really important, Jessica said. If buildings weren't built right, people could get hurt. Exactly right, sweetheart. Ashley materialized beside us, like she'd been monitoring my conversations from across the room. Jessica, sweetie, go say goodbye to your teachers. We need to leave soon. Jessica skipped away, still clutching her award, and Ashley turned to me with that tight smile I'd been seeing more and more lately. Did you tell her you're a construction worker? She asked what I do for a living, Ashley. Was I supposed to lie? I've been telling people you're in transportation consulting. Can't you just go along with that? Transportation consulting, like I was some white-collar executive instead of a man who'd spent 4 decades making sure America's buildings didn't collapse. I drove home that night in my 15-year-old Ford F-150, the truck I'd maintained myself because I knew every bolt and gasket in that engine. The radio was playing some country song about honest work and small-town values, but I turned it off. I needed quiet to think about what had just happened. Ashley's words kept echoing in my head. These people don't need to know that. Like what I did for a living was some dirty secret. Like the man who'd raised her alone, who'd sacrificed everything to give her opportunities I never had, was something to be ashamed of. I thought about Mary, how proud she'd been when I got promoted to site supervisor, how she used to brag to her friends about the schools and hospitals I'd helped build. My Tyler builds things that last, she'd say, things that matter. But Ashley didn't see it that way. To her, I was just an embarrassment in work boots. I sat at my kitchen table, The same oak table where Ashley used to do her homework, where I'd helped her with algebra and listened to her talk about her dreams of college and a better life. The house had been quiet since Mary died, but tonight it felt different. Tonight it felt honest in a way that Marble Auditorium never could. The next morning, I called First National Bank and asked for Margaret Henderson. She'd been my financial advisor for 25 years, helped me set up Mary's life insurance, guided me through the complexities of saving for Ashley's education. "Tyler, good to hear from you," Margaret said. "What can I do for you today? That education fund I set up for Jessica, the one that's been paying Riverside Preparatory automatically. I need to make some changes." "Of course. What kind of changes are we talking about?" I took a deep breath. "I want to set up a new 529 education savings plan in Jessica's name only. Transfer the remaining balance from the current arrangement into that new account. And I want to stop the automatic payments to the school." There was a long pause. Margaret had seen me through a lot of financial decisions over the years, but this one clearly caught her off guard. That's a significant change, Tyler. The remaining balance is substantial. May I ask what's prompting this? Let's just say I want to make sure the money is there for Jessica when she really needs it. College, graduate school, whatever comes next. But I want control over how it's used. And the tuition payments for the current semester? Stop them, effective immediately. Tyler, they're going to get a notice that the payment has failed. The school will contact Ashley. I know. I hung up and poured myself another cup of coffee. Through the kitchen window, I could see my neighbor working in his garden, getting his hands dirty in the soil. Honest work, productive work. The kind of work that builds something real instead of just maintaining appearances. For the next 6 weeks, I went about my normal routine. Up at 5:30, coffee in the newspaper, then off to whatever job site needed me that day. I was currently overseeing the construction of a new medical center downtown. 200 beds, state-of-the-art equipment, a place where people would come to heal and get better. The kind of project that made me proud to punch a time clock. My crew respected me. The architects listened when I pointed out potential problems with their designs. The city inspectors trusted my work because they knew I'd never cut corners or compromise safety for the sake of a deadline. I was good at what I did, and it earned every bit of recognition the hard way. But apparently, that wasn't good enough for my daughter's new social circle. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing blueprints in my site trailer when my phone rang. Ashley's name on the caller ID. "Tyler, there's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The school called. They said the tuition payment for the spring semester bounced. They said the account has been closed." Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. "That's correct." Silence. Then, "What do you mean, that's correct?" "I closed the account, Ashley. I stopped the automatic payments. I could hear her breathing, trying to process what had just told her. "Why would you do that?" "Because I got tired of being your dirty little secret. I got tired of being introduced as Tyler to people who don't need to know him, a construction worker. Tyler, that's not..." I paid $45,000 for Jessica's education. 3 years of tuition, paid in advance because you asked me to. Because you said family helps family. But I'm not going to keep paying to be hidden in the back row of my own granddaughter's life. You're being ridiculous. I never said you were an embarrassment. You told your friends I do transportation consulting. You couldn't even say I was your father. That's not fair. You don't understand the situation we're in. Then explain it to me. And she did. It all came pouring out like water through a broken dam. Brandon's construction business was struggling. The high-end residential market had dried up after the latest economic downturn, and he was competing with companies that had deeper pockets and better connections. They'd leveraged everything on the assumption that he'd land contracts through the relationships Ashley was building at Jessica's school. The BMW in their driveway, leased, payments they could barely afford. The country club membership, necessary for networking, even though it was eating up their savings. The house with the 3-car garage and the manicured lawn. Mortgage to the ceiling, every payment a struggle. We're barely holding on, Tyler. If people knew how bad things really were, Brandon would never get the contracts he needs. We have to maintain appearances. At what cost, Ashley? At whatever cost it takes. This is about Jessica's future. This is about our family's survival. And what about me, Ashley? Am I part of this family? Of course you are. Then why wasn't I sitting with the family at that ceremony? Why couldn't you introduce me as your father? She didn't have an answer for that. The silence stretched between us like a gap in a foundation that keeps getting wider until the whole structure comes down. "I've moved the money into a 529 account for Jessica," I said finally. "It'll be there when she needs it for college, graduate school, whatever. But I'm not funding your shame anymore. I'm not paying for you to be embarrassed of me." "Tyler, wait." I hung up. The next 3 months were the hardest I'd faced since Mary's funeral. Ashley didn't call. I didn't call her. The silence in my house felt different now, not just empty, but wounded. I kept expecting the phone to ring, kept hoping she'd come to her senses, and remember that being a father meant something more than being a financial resource. I heard things through my brother Carl, who still talked to Ashley occasionally. Jessica had been pulled from Riverside mid-semester. The tuition for the spring term was too steep without my prepayment, and they couldn't qualify for financial aid because of Brandon's business assets on paper. Jessica was now enrolled at Roosevelt Middle School, the same public school where Ashley had gone before Id scraped together enough money to send her to a better district. Carl also told me that Brandon had lost a big commercial contract, something that would have kept them afloat for the next 2 years. Apparently, the client had gone with a more established firm, one with better references and a longer track record. The BMW had been returned to the dealership, replaced with a used Honda Accord. They'd canceled the country club membership. I wanted to call. Every instinct I had as a father told me to pick up that phone and try to fix things. That's what we do. We solve problems, we provide solutions, we make the hurt go away. But some things need to stay broken for a while before they can be properly repaired. I threw myself into work. The medical center project was in its final phase, and there were 100 details that needed my attention. Electrical systems to inspect, plumbing fixtures to approve, safety protocols to review. Good, honest work that produced something real and lasting. When people got sick, they'd come to this building I'd helped create, and they'd get better. That mattered in a way that social climbing never would. My crew could tell something was eating at me, but they didn't pry. Construction workers understand that a man's private business is his own. They just made sure to do their jobs right the first time, which is the best gift you can give a supervisor who's carrying extra weight. It was a Saturday afternoon in November when everything changed. I was in my garage rebuilding the carburetor on my old lawnmower, the kind of meditative work that helps clear your head, when I heard a car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I saw Ashley's Honda. She stayed in the driver's seat, engine running, like she wasn't sure she was ready to commit to this visit. But Jessica got out of the passenger side and walked up to my front door. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and went to let her in. "Grandpa? Come in, sweetheart." She looked older somehow, even though it had only been 3 months, still 12, still my granddaughter, but there was something different in her eyes. Experience, maybe, or understanding. She sat at my kitchen table, in the same chair where her mother used to do homework all those years ago. For a moment, I could see Ashley at that age, back when she thought I was the smartest man in the world, instead of someone to be hidden from polite company. "Why did you stop paying for my school?" Jessica asked. I'd known this question was coming. I had practiced different answers, tried to figure out how to explain adult problems to a 12-year-old. But sitting across from her, seeing Mary's gentleness in her face mixed with Ashley's determination, all my rehearsed explanations seemed inadequate. Because sometimes the price of something isn't just money, I said. Sometimes we pay with pieces of ourselves, and it paid too much. She frowned, trying to work through what I meant. "I don't understand. Your mom was embarrassed of me, of what I do for work, and I got tired of apologizing for having an honest job. She told me you're a construction supervisor. She said you make sure buildings are safe so people don't get hurt. That surprised me. After months of transportation consulting lies, Ashley had finally told Jessica the truth. Did that bother you? Finding out what I really do? No, I think it's cool." She smiled, and it was like sunshine after a long winter. My new school had career day last month, and all the parents came to talk about their jobs. There were doctors and lawyers and teachers, and one kid's mom works for the mayor's office. But nobody had a grandpa who builds things. "What did you tell them?" "I told my teacher about you, how you make sure hospitals and schools are built right." She said, "Construction supervisors are really important because they keep people safe." She said, "Without people like you, buildings could fall down and hurt people." She's right. I miss Riverside sometimes. I had friends there, and the science lab was really nice. But I like Roosevelt too. The kids are... She searched for the right word. They're more like me. What do you mean? At Riverside, everyone was always talking about their parents' jobs and their big houses and their vacations to Europe. I felt like I was always pretending to be something I wasn't. At Roosevelt, kids just care about normal stuff, like who's going to win the basketball game and whether the cafeteria pizza is any good. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her backpack. We had to write an essay for English class about someone we admire. I wrote about you. Want to read it? The title was My Grandpa, the Builder. I read it slowly, my reading glasses balanced on the end of my nose like they always were when I reviewed. Construction plans. She'd written about how Id worked since I was 22. How Id raised her mom alone after Grandma Mary died. How Id paid for Mom's college even though money was tight. She'd written about visiting my job sites when she was little. How I'd shown her how to read blueprints and explained why every measurement had to be exact. She'd written that I was the hardest working person she knew, and that she wanted to build things too when she grew up, just like me. But it was the last paragraph that got me. My grandpa taught me that there's no shame in honest work, only in dishonest living. He builds hospitals where sick people get better and schools where kids learn important things. When I grow up, I want to help people the way my grandpa does, by building things that matter. I couldn't finish reading out loud. My eyes were too blurry. Grandpa, are you okay? I'm more than okay, sweetheart. This is the best thing anyone's ever written about me. Really? Mom cried when she read it. 2. Then she said, we needed to come see you. I looked out the window at Ashley's car, still running in my driveway. She'd been sitting there for 20 minutes, probably working up the courage to face me. Why don't you go get your mom? Tell her I'd like to talk to her. A few minutes later, Ashley knocked on my door. Her eyes were red, and she looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but like someone who'd been carrying too much weight and finally set it down. Dad, she said, and the word hit me like a warm breeze. Not Tyler. Dad. Come in, Ashley. We sat at that kitchen table, the 3 of us, and for the first time in months, it felt like a family again. I'm sorry, Ashley said. I am so sorry. I got so caught up in trying to fix our lives, trying to keep up appearances, that I forgot what actually matters. Jessica wrote that essay, and I realized I was teaching her to be ashamed of the best man I know. I'm not perfect, Ashley, but you're real. You're honest. You've worked your whole life. With your hands, and there's honor in that. There's dignity in that. Her voice cracked. I forgot. I'm so sorry I forgot. What happens now? I asked. Brandon's taken a steady job with Peterson Construction. Regular hours, decent pay, good benefits. He's going to rebuild his business the right way this time, with projects he can actually handle. We sold the house last month. We're renting a smaller place until we get back on our feet. And Jessica, she loves Roosevelt. She joined the robotics club. Did you know she's good at engineering? I looked at Jessica, who was grinning at me. Is that right? She nodded, suddenly shy. I like figuring out how things work, taking them apart and putting them back together. Just like her grandpa, Ashley said softly. Over the next few months, everything slowly got better. Jessica started coming over every Saturday. I taught her about load-bearing walls and foundation principles. I showed her how to use a level, how to read the stress points in a structure, how to spot potential problems before they became dangerous. She was a natural, quick hands, sharp mind, always asking the right questions. One Saturday in spring, she was helping me replace some deck boards when she asked, Grandpa, do you think I could be a construction supervisor like you? You could be anything you want, Jessica. But if you wanted to work construction, you'd be damn good at it. Mom says I should think about engineering school. She says I could design buildings and then make sure they're built right too. What do you want? She was quiet for a moment, holding a measuring tape while I marked a cut line. I think I want to understand everything. How to design something and how to build it safely. Is that possible? That's the smartest approach I've heard in years. That evening, Ashley came to pick Jessica up. She stood in my garage, looking around at the tools I'd collected over 4 decades. I used to play out here when I was little, she said. You taught me the names of all your tools. Phillips head screwdriver, socket wrench, torque wrench. You had a good memory. I'd forgotten a lot of things. She turned to me. Thank you, Dad. For what? For not letting me stay lost. For caring enough to stop enabling my foolishness before I taught Jessica that shame was more important than truth. You're my daughter. That's what fathers do. She hugged me then, and I smelled her shampoo, the same brand she'd used since high school. For a moment, she was 16 again, asking me to explain how electrical circuits work. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo. I still have Jessica's essay. It's framed now, hanging in my garage next to my contractor's license and a photo of the medical center I helped build. Sometimes when I'm working on a project and getting frustrated with stubborn bolts or measurements that don't add up, I read it again. That night at Riverside Preparatory, sitting in the back row while my daughter introduced me as just Tyler, had hurt, more than I wanted to admit. But that hurt led to something better. To Jessica in my garage, learning to read blueprints. To Ashley remembering who raised her. To honest conversations at a kitchen table instead of pretense in marble halls. I'd paid $45,000 for Jessica's education at that fancy school. But the real lesson, the one about honest work and authentic relationships, that lesson we all learned for free. And it was worth every single moment. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is refusing to participate in their self-deception. That's when real love shows its backbone. I learned that dignity isn't something you wear like a suit for special occasions. It's something you earn every day with your hands, your choices, and your willingness to stand up for who you really are.